Hello and welcome to the Transcend and Succeed show. I'm your guest host, Megan North, and I'd like to firstly thank our wonderful sponsors of the show, Quantum Awakening, Voyage of Transcendence, myself, and our lovely guest who paid to be featured on the show today. So today I am joined by an amazing and beautiful woman who I met about 12 months ago when I joined a new business networking group. Uma Panch is a multi-award-winning international mindset coach, Mindfulness Trainer, and dynamic keynote speaker. She's the visionary founder of Quantum Mind Lab, a social enterprise dedicated to advancing personal transformation. As an academic and researcher, Uma is soon embarking on a PhD in mindfulness, further expanding her expertise. Driven by a powerful life mission, Uma empowers leaders to break through barriers and realize their full potential with authenticity. Her unique approach guides individuals to tap into their subconscious and superconscious minds, achieving rapid, radical shifts. For well over a decade, Uma has helped countless people awaken their spirits using her Sacred Trikona methodology. What sets her approach apart is the unique fusion of spiritual and scientific faculties for powerful, positive alchemy, enabling profound shifts that reshape the mind, body, and spirit. Welcome to the show, Uma. I'm so thrilled that you're joining me today.
Thank you so much, Megan. I am so thrilled and so grateful for this opportunity.
How does it feel when I read out your bio and you hear all the list of achievements?
Oh my gosh, it's like, oh, wow, right? Because most often it's hard for us to kind of look back and see how far we've come, but just gives this opportunity to see, I think there's this little bit of a transformation that's happening, and to be part of that, I just feel very blessed and honored.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's get started, because I know that we've both been very much looking forward to this conversation. So I'm happy to dive in. So can you begin by telling us about your journey into transformational coaching?
My journey started at a point where I hit my rock bottom, Megan. And this was more of a situation where, my desperation became my inspiration. So at that point where I was rock bottom, I was in existential crisis, and I was seeking what am I here for? But I do remember, Megan, a couple of years before that, I had this silent little voice that popped in my head and said, what is the purpose of your life? And then I go, wow, this is so big of a question. I have no clue what this is. I'm going to shut my eyes, my ears, and my mouth. I'm not going to even think about it because it's too big of a thing to me. That voice kept coming up again. I'm actually having goosebumps as I say this, but it kept coming again and again, and I kept suppressing it. And then something hit hard. I hit rock bottom, and I had nothing else to do but find the purpose of my life. So that desperation led me to go on to this path. And at a point where I was so lost, I didn't know what to do. And then I thought, you know what? I just didn't come here to leave. I came here because there's a reason. And all I needed to do at that point was I went on a quest to find myself. That was the journey of self-discovery, transformation, metamorphosis, and awakening, and transcendental, and so many things.
Wow. And so when you were having that little moment and that voice in your head, at the time, were you surrounded by people who were more open to their purpose and transforming, or is it so was I guess I'm just curious to know if it was a voice that kept coming into your head because of the people that you were surrounding yourself with. So do you think that that was popping in for that reason?
No, Megan. That's the thing. That's why when that word popped in, I'm like, I don't know what this is. I've not heard about it. I don't hear people talking about it. But in we know it's been there from ancient times, but not in our day-to-day life, like people talking about purpose and passion and calling. Now people do. And this era, there's such a big spiritual awakening happening that every other person talks about it. But 10 years back, I'm like, what is this?
Mm.
So nobody, I didn't know anybody talk about it, and it was very scary to me.
Mm. And so
Mm.
when you decided to act on it,
Yeah.
who was like, what was the first thing that you did? Did you reach out to someone that you thought might know what you're talking about? How did that journey start?
Great, great question. Thinking back, I had nobody. I didn't know nobody that I could go and talk to. Firstly, I was so much when things go wrong, you start getting into this, you disintegrate from your core because at your core, your love, peace, joy, harmony, everything. But then when an event happens and then an emotion reaction happens because of that, and that emotional reaction brings about negative emotions such as guilt, regret, shame,
Mm.
resentment, anger, and all those things. And then it disconnects you with your own core, right? Because I was disconnected with myself, I was in war with everybody, but little did I realize that I was in war with myself. And I didn't feel like there was anyone I could go and talk to and ask for help. And also, the thing where we feel like, oh, I shouldn't be asking for help. People are going to think, oh, what? Because you feel like you're a strong woman, you can deal with this. So I
Yeah.
couldn't go and ask help from anyone. So I went on researching. That's when I first started to research about these things, what's going on for me. And I started to step onto that journey.
Right. Okay. And so were you a researcher before, or was this a new passion then that you uncovered by going through that process?
It was a new discovery for me because I just realized that it's not about at that point all I wanted is I'm feeling so negative. I'm going through all this negative emotion. What do I need to do? Okay, positive psychology is the way, gratitude is the way. And I'm like, what is all these things? How can this help me? But I went on researching and researching and researching. That's when I learned about everything. And Megan, imagine when you're mid 40s and you hit rock bottom and thinking, how am I going to come back and raise? And because when that happened, I was in a very good position in terms of my work, my family, a fulfilling life and career and everything. But then you feel like nothing mattered anymore, right? So that's when I realized that it was more to do with something inside me because that was what was reflecting outside of me. So
Mm.
that research, I was not a researcher. I only started to look into these things when I hit rock bottom.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
And I could imagine for you that it was quite astounding once you started researching to realize how much was already out there about this stuff.
It was, and it was like, oh my gosh. It started with the book, The Secret as well. But before that, I think the awakening happens when you go through traumatic experiences, because I was seeing numbers and other stuff. So it all started to make sense. Like it was like puzzle for me. Well, what is this? Well, what is that? But then what is this? And then you see everything is part of that one thing. The oneness that I realized was unreal, unreal.
Yeah, wow, amazing, amazing. So what what was the inspiration? Because we often talk about what sparked or prompted us to make a change, but then sometimes I think that the inspiration can be
Mhm.
just as important as that. So, what was the inspiration around you going on this path that you've been on for the last 10 years?
The inspiration was just the desperation. The catalyst was where there's more to life and there's something more I'm here for. And because I felt that in a way, something just shifted, dramatically shifted around me, that nothing mattered to me. I had to go looking for something outside. I was like, but then it was actually inside, but the journey began. I'm going to change my environment. So it was the desperation. And I realized that it's not about what happens to you. It's about what do you do with what happens to you.
Yeah.
Right. Then shifting from the effect to the cause, knowing that how am I a part of this? How did I contribute to this? And how can I come out of this? What's the learning? So it was that thinking that changed everything. So the desperation for me was my inspiration.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So you've developed a unique methodology called Trikona. Trikona? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Yeah. So can you share more about its essence and how it came to be?
Sure. So Trikona, there has been a few moments of, divine downloads, I would call them.
Mm-hmm.
One such thing was when I was going through those difficult time and I had this awakening and I was seeing numbers. There was another time where I had a transcendental experience. And this Trikona was part of when I started to help myself. Initially, it was all about helping myself. I can't even think about helping others because I was in trouble, right?
Yeah.
I was using different formulas, methods, and researching and learning. There was a lot out there, but what really worked for me was when I integrated 3 key elements. So Trikona is a Sanskrit word, which means it's the 3 angles and it's the triangle. That's what is called Trikona in Sanskrit.
Right.
Yeah. So it's from the language Sanskrit. The word Trikona means the triangle. It's got the 3 angles to it and 3 elements. And the way that I've created this methodology is that using intellectual, spiritual, and emotional faculties to create that transformation. Because I realized I did a lot of emotional work, right? I did a lot of deep state repatterning, healing work and everything. But then you get to a point and again you're stuck. And I'm like, why am I stuck again? And then I go, oh, right, there's something to happen at the mindset level.
Mm-hmm.
So work on your mind because you can't solve the problem, the same thinking that created the problem, as Albert Einstein says. So the quality of your life depends on the quality of your thinking. And I'm like, okay, I've done the emotional work. I feel much healed now, but then still I feel stuck. So I went into the intellectual elements. And then again with mindfulness and other elements, I started to see a shift. And again, you feel stuck. And I go, oh my gosh, there is the spiritual element to this.
Yeah.
You've got this human design, these parts of you, because as human beings, we're energy, vibration, and frequency. There's no way I'm going to get to the next level unless I work on the spiritual element. So everything happened kind of, sometimes you can see it happen simultaneously. Sometimes I felt it just happened in different times. But then I realized that is the methodology, which was a divine download for me. And that is the methodology I work with my clients for the rapid and powerful transformation.
Wow. And so is it, so when you're talking about the 3-pronged approach, when you're working with a client, do you intuitively know from session to session what part of that triangle you need to work on?
Exactly. I tell my clients that if you're seeking that level of transformation, this is how I work. Are you happy for us to go through that path, right? And it's always a yes. And then when I start working, usually I start with the emotional part because that's where we need the healing. That's where they're most often stuck because in order to reach your core, so as human beings, I told you about this event happens to us. So from our core, we are disintegrated. We create a crust, and the crust is, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not, liked enough. I'm fear of rejection, because that's not very looking too good. We create a mask, which is the crud. So there's 2 layers to, so you have the core, the crud, and the crust. And the crust is where, because you don't like yourself as a person feeling guilty or, you're not good enough, you create that crud called people pleaser, commitment phobic, workaholic, shopaholic, alcoholic, all those things, Martia, and all those personality types, that the masks and layers we put up, I became a workaholic and a shopaholic, right? So, but some people become people pleasers or commitment phobic. So in order to cut through all those and come to your core, you need all those three interventions. So I usually start with an emotional intervention. I go into intellectual intervention and spiritual intervention. Sometimes the order might change, but the emotional intervention is the first step.
Right. Wow. Okay. I love that you gave that analogy of those things and then it creates a crust. I think that
Yeah,
that's really interesting because I've never thought of that before in the
yeah.
sense of, because then it becomes a hard layer in us, doesn't it?
It does. And that's why we are not our authentic self anymore, Megan. Because at core, if you are love, at source, you are love. So why don't we sometimes feel loved? Why don't we feel joy? Why don't we feel happiness? Because you're way far away from your core and you are covered by the crud and the crust. And hence, my work is all about authenticity and helping people to unleash their true potential and through the work of authenticity.
Mm. And so do you have clients that come to you who are a little bit not sure about the spiritual piece, but maybe get the emotional and the academic, but or the mindset, and then think, okay, I'll have a go at this spirituality thing? Or is it more people are really invested in the spirituality?
I think interestingly, Megan, I've mostly attracted clients who are on that journey
Yeah.
and they kind of get it. The moment I say I'm on this, and Megan, incredible things have happened. Like see, the reason why these transformations have happened so far with my clients is I'd be saying something, they'd go away and come back and say, Uma, I didn't have a business for 6 months. You asked me to do this. I did this. Just 4 hours later, I got a client booked in. I'm like, no way. Because it actually, I'm like, really, are you sure about it? In fact, my lovely client, she even left a testimonial saying that, Uma, just after we spoke, I did what you said, asked me to do. And because sometimes I just intuitively feel a lot of things and I just tell them and then the transformation happens. So I truly believe that if the work is deeply spiritual, and if we are not connected at a spiritual level, or the other person doesn't believe or trust in it, the process won't work, because it works only as much as the client believes that it'll work. And because this is co-creation, both of us, we are in this quantum matrix. And I love the element of the holographic matrix, where we're living in this three-dimensional world and everything is already there. So when we connect at that vibrational and frequency level, that's when the transformation happens. So they've got to be open to that and allow me to help them to transcend.
Yeah. And isn't that interesting with your client? I think sometimes as well is that we need to get out of our own way in relation to what can actually help us with what we're trying to heal or transform, or particularly from a business point of view, because we only then see what we can see, but then sometimes it takes and probably some of the things that you're intuitively suggesting are probably really simple things that the client can do, but it's got a very big impact for them.
Yeah. And in fact, there was one event that happened that I actually freaked out when it happened. I woke up one morning having a dream that one of my clients' child had fallen off the pram and had hurt herself. And in fact, in that dream, I was close to her. I'm trying to hold the baby, but she falls off the pram. And then I go and I'm not sure whether I should tell her or not, but I had a message. And the message was, let her know that she needs to focus on the child and not the business. And I'm like thinking, I'm her business coach. How am I going to go and tell her, don't focus on business? Like, I do business, spiritual, and personal coaching. But I thought, I have a duty of care. I've got to let her know. So sometime in 2016, I let her know. And then January 1st comes my birthday. She didn't wish me. She usually wishes me. And I was feeling really bad. Maybe she felt angry or upset with me. Guess what? I call her and say, hey, is everything okay? Happy New Year. She said, hey, this happened. My baby fell off the bed. We are with the neurosurgeon right now. I really freaked out. I said, what were you doing? I didn't even ask, how was the kid? For the first question was, what were you doing? She said, I left her on the bed. I went to pick up a call or something. I said, but I told you. She said, I know. And so things like that has, weird stuff have happened, but there's so much of truth and insights and wisdom there, I guess. And I'm just grateful that sometimes things gets channeled through you, and just to be feeling privileged about it, Megan.
And I suppose the thing is too, your message of, focus on the child, not on the business. You wouldn't think that just putting the baby on the bed would be, that you're having to be focused that much. And maybe that was, how interesting is that? Gosh,
I know.
wow.
Right?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. All right. So let's hear from our sponsors. And let's have a couple of minutes of hearing from our sponsors, and then we'll come back because there's so much more that I want to dive into. So and welcome back, everybody. So, Uma, can you share with us some of the most common mindset barriers that you encounter in your clients, and then how do you guide them in breaking through these obstacles?
Some of the common barriers I've seen is, one of the most important is imposter syndrome. And with people in high caliber professionals that I see this. In fact, I recently ran a workshop called Breaking Free Imposter Syndrome and Living with Confidence and Authenticity for a group of doctors. So we see that it's very common, and it all comes back to fears such as I'm not good enough, I'm not loved enough, the universal fears that people have. And this is again just away from our core, because at source, at our core, we are everything that we desire to be, but it's just because we've distanced ourselves. So because of those sort of fear that people have, and as we all know, or for those who don't know, this is basically at a subconscious level. And our conscious mind, say for instance, someone feels that, oh, I'm not going to get this job, I can't find the love of my life, or, I can't change my life. Then what happens is your subconscious mind is constantly seeking evidence to make that belief a reality. The self-fulfilling prophecy, the cognitive bias, or we call the placebo effect. That's why you see that manifesting in your life. People most often say, "Oh, I want to know how to manifest." They talk to me and say, "Teach me visualization, manifestation." I said, "You're always manifesting." The question is, am I manifesting good things or bad things in my life?
Yeah.
Because it's a matter of attraction, right? The law of attraction. So those are the quite common kind of problems I see with people, is that the self-imposed barriers at we are our own prisoners. I saw one of our sponsors mention that too, right? Don't be the prisoner of your mind. So absolutely, that's the common ones that I see, Megan.
And when you're talking about imposter syndrome, because I know that you're going to answer the next part of that question, but when you're talking about imposter syndrome, can you just expand on that a little bit? Because I know that we all hear that, but can you explain what that actually is?
Yeah. So imposter syndrome is a feeling where these are highly capable people who have actually achieved success in their life, who just feel that they are a fake, that they are going to be caught, that somebody is going to say that you don't know what you're doing, right? So it's that feeling that I'm not good enough. I don't have this. So somebody is going to see me and say, you don't have the qualification to do this, or you don't have the expertise to do this. I don't want to work with you, and things like that, right?
Right.
So imagine going to work every day feeling that, oh my God, I'm going to be caught because people are going to think that I don't know what I do. And these are typically people who have been very successful in the past.
Yeah.
So things happen, and again, emotional reactions to that. And
Mm.
then the doubt, the self-seeded doubt that I'm fake.
Right. And I
Mm.
suppose from you were just talking then about working with a group of doctors. I mean, oh my gosh, that would be a disaster for a doctor going into work and thinking, I'm a fake. Someone's going to find out that I can't do this because they're
Yeah.
working with humans. They could be surgeons, like all of these sort of things. It would be
Yeah.
terrible to be feeling that.
Yeah,
Mm,
it's very difficult. And the fact is that, this happens to many people. Even I've heard coaches feel that way, consultants feel that way, professionals in other industries feel that way,
yeah,
CEOs having those feelings. And it's just that to understand that is where we are just disconnected from ourselves, because we are source. How could we not be good enough?
yeah.
Right? And if we have succeeded, there is evidence in the past that we've succeeded. But unfortunately, the things that unfolds for them during the course of their professional life seeds those fears and beliefs, and that belief becomes their reality.
Right. Okay. And then so we'd be talking about subconscious beliefs in the sense of, say, 5 years ago, someone said to them, "Oh, you're really hopeless at this. You need to get better," or
Yeah,
maybe grew up in a household of, "You're never going to be smart enough to be a doctor." And so it's
yeah,
that sort of stuff then, isn't it, that layers into our subconscious and our belief systems that
absolutely.
keeps raising up. Yeah.
Yes. And because it's in our subconscious mind, we are then seeking evidence. So we attract people, and then that puts a certain energy out. We attract the kind of people, the events, and the circumstances that reinforces those beliefs, that it shows to us that, yeah, you see, I told you. And then you're going to tell yourself, I told you, right, that this is not going to work, that you're going to fail. This is not going to happen. So that's what
Yeah.
happens. They
Well,
manifest into their life.
wow. And then I think the other thing to the opposite side of that, isn't it, is that someone pays them a compliment, oh, you're really good at this. And then in their head, they're like, well, what do they know? No. First they'll deflect the compliment. Oh, don't be silly, no, 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 no. But then in their head, they start to think, oh, well, what would they know? They don't know me.
Yeah,
And then they start to use a compliment then as a negative belief and thought as
exactly.
well. Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe they're just lying. This can't be true, and then they don't even take those compliments because they feel, no, they're actually judging me, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. And so the other part of that then is that, so when we said about the mindset barriers, and so how do you guide them in breaking through those obstacles? What can you give an example perhaps of where you've worked with someone that has had that imposter syndrome and how you've helped them come out through the other side of that?
Definitely. So this was in my early days of coaching, and I actually never coached a doctor at that time. But then he mentioned to me that this is what was going on, and had failed his fellowship exams a couple of times, and then wanted to pass his fellowship exam because he even felt like he needed to give up his profession. And I said, and he actually saw one of my interview in another country, which was relayed in Australia, and he said, he just called me. I found your number. He reached out for my number, and then we spoke. And then we started. I said, see, I've not worked with doctors, but the methodology is the same. So let's go for it. Within the next 3 sessions, so it was more of deep state repatterning. I went into a deeper stage where he actually had built that belief and showed him evidences that those beliefs were not true. So also a values recalibration, beliefs repatterning, and also understanding what the real core problem is, because the problem is never the problem. Oh, I can't pass my exam is not a problem. The deeper problem is I am not good enough, right? So in understanding those things, just 3 sessions, he went for his exam in Melbourne. He passed his exam. He called me straight away and told me, Uma, I passed the exam. I'm like, oh my gosh, how amazing is that? So it was simple shifts like that that can change and transforms people's life to just have that quantum leap in their lives. So yeah, quantum leap is possible through the right mindset shift.
Wow. And so was it any one particular thing that he had a belief system in, or was it a combination of things? Or, I mean, obviously I'm not asking you to breach their confidentiality, but just curious in relation to, I think the audience could really benefit from understanding what those sort of things are.
Absolutely. Yes, it's totally confidential. And since we are not releasing any names here, so it was a fear of failure and a combination of fear of not being good enough. So if I fear that I'm going to fail, I will fail.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of 2 things.
Right. Okay. And was that something that he had learned from a child, or was it a cultural thing, or was it just or just something that he had then learned what he needed to learn about himself?
That was not actually from the childhood. It had happened way into his adulthood. An emotional event happened, and then that created that belief. So
Right.
for some people, it does come from childhood.
Yeah.
Some defining moment happens in our life, and then we start carrying those beliefs.
Yeah. And do you know what I think is really fascinating about this work that you do is that it could just be one random thing that someone says off the cuff that you
Yeah.
just, at that moment, you've just taken it on, and it can then cause a crust. And your belief system is then just completely thrown and completely taken
Yeah.
over just because of that one comment and I bet if you ever went back to a person and said, did you know you said this to me, they would probably never even remember.
Yeah, so true, Megan, because human beings are meaning making machines, right? We make meaning through the filters that we see the world. And these filters are the beliefs and the conditioning that we are made up of. So obviously, that we can literally take. Most often it happens in childhood, because as I remember, I'm working with a client. She was 60 years old, and then we went into this journey of finding, because she had anxiety, but working on the anxiety. The problem was not anxiety, the problem was I'm not good enough. So when I took her deep down that traveling on that journey, she went to when she was 9 months old, and she said she felt she was not good enough. I said, what happened? She said, I was in the crib. My parents were fighting, and then I thought I was not good enough. Now the parents would have fought because they said, you didn't buy milk, you didn't take the garbage out or whatever, but it's energy, right? So as a child, all they want, and they want to know that my parents are okay and that I'm loved. But once that trust is violated, they become vigilant and anxious, and they carry it through their adulthood.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's just fascinating, really
Yeah.
fascinating. So I understand that you experienced a Kundalini awakening that connected you with the universal number 1111. So we've talked a lot about that today already, you and I, before we started recording. So, and it's even inspired a tattoo on your wrist. So can you walk us through that transformative moment?
Yes. So this happened when I didn't know when that happened, that is what had happened. So I told you that at a point where I hit really rock bottom, I was going through this phases of anxiety and panic attacks. And actually, I didn't know what panic attack was at that time. Usually in the Eastern world, this is not very much spoken about. So it was even a taboo subject to talk about. So I didn't even know what panic attack or anxiety was or depression was. But when I hit that point, I was seeing, why am I feeling vomitish? Why is my heart palpitating? And then I Google, and Dr. Google, I was the one I would go to all the time, right? Because I'm very ashamed to go to any other doctor. Imagine how and I'm just thinking, why didn't I go and talk to a doctor then? Anyway, and then I realized, oh, it's panic attack. Oh, it's anxiety. There's something called depression. And I was actually in the verge of depression.
Right.
But then what happened was, this is when I was having the transitioning moments. And then I used to wake up saying 1111. And I have absolutely no clue about spirituality. I am religious, but not very, very religious, but I do believe in God and stuff, but nothing about spirituality I didn't know. But then I'm saying 111 every time, midnight I'll wake up. It's 1 o'clock, 11 minutes, right? It was in door numbers, it was in cars, and I literally freaked and I'm stop. What is this? I went and researched and I saw that it was angel numbers. And then all of us get a certain number, a message that is given to us. And I realized, and interestingly, if you put together my birth date as well, I'm 1st of January, and with 1973, if you add up all those numbers, it ends up to be 1111. And I'm like, this cannot be true. Is that it? How? And that happened. And after that, I started to see those numbers, and every time I saw that, it was reaffirming things. So I knew I was on the right track. So I did a bit of study on that and realized that it is an awakening. And what happened was, Kundalini awakening is where you have your chakras. We saw one of our sponsors where we had so those chakras as well, your different chakras in your body. So that awakening happens when for some people, when traumatic things happen, it can get awakened. For some people, they can this is organic. For some people, they can actively go and awaken their Kundalini Shakti. Shakti is power, right? So after that, I went for an event where they said, oh, we're doing a Kundalini awakening. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to experience this. And nothing happened to me. Body was shivering, things were going on, but nothing happened to me. And then that guru told me that, Uma, you have been already awakened. That's why. And I didn't know, but everything, the transformation, the metamorphosis that I went through, all that I knew what happened to me after years, I look back and the puzzle all came into play. And then I realized, and then I went and also got the tattoo there because it's very deep for me, and it's very healing, the number.
Yeah, beautiful. My husband and I, if you ever look, we always joke about looking through our text messages because we'll see like 1111, 1010, 909, or then we'll see 1313, 1414. And so it's always a bit of a race to see who can text each other. And even now, like I'm sitting at home and he's out in his office, and I'd be sitting here working and I'd get a message from him because it was like 1313 or 14 or 14 or 1111. So
right. And Megan, that's so amazing. And people who know, they know, right? Because in science they say frequency and so on, but in spirituality we say the vibe, right? The vibe attracts your tribe. So it's so true, these numbers. And imagine how this today, when we decided to do this show, it ended up being 11th of November, so 11/11. We decided 11 a.m. And then we ended up with some, setup and everything. We started at 11/11 actually. So it all lined up to be those numbers. We didn't plan. And also during this time, I ended up traveling to the US, which was not planned at all. But it is the 10th for me. So the 10/7/11 I started. So again, everything lined up with those numbers, right? So
it's amazing. Yeah. And I think for our audience, I think it's important to understand that when you see double numbers, Google it because it will usually tell you what like if you see 1313 or 1414 or something like that. But it's also then be aware of what you're thinking at that time. So you may be talking about something or you may be working on something and then you see a double number, and often that can then be a sign from your guides or your angels or someone or from the universe to say, take note of actually what you were thinking at that time. I think it's really important.
very important. People understand. But Megan, I should also share this one. I was in Melbourne in January, and what happened was I was seeing 1111, 10, 10, 11, 11 to a point where I literally freaked out. It was like the room number, the hotel number, the table number, everything was those numbers. And then I was going in a cab and I sit in the front seat and it is KISS, whatever. That also had the 111 numbers. And I literally stopped and asked the universe, what is going on? I'm really freaking out. I'm scared. Why am I seeing these numbers? And guess what I saw? Immediately I saw a car going in front of me, and the number plate, you could read it as, of course, there were numbers and signs and everything. It was Big Things Infinity is what I read, because it was BIGT number 8, which is infinite, right? So I realized when I started this year, I said, I want expansion. That's the theme of the year. And it was affirming to say that big things are going to happen for you in infinity. So we need to learn how to read it. So thank you for sharing that with the audience.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Being open to that sort of stuff is just so incredible because you get messages all the time. You just have to be open to seeing them and interpreting them. Yeah, it's really lovely. Thanks for sharing that. I love that. Big things are coming definitely for you. I love that.
Thank you.
So you also had a profound experience of enlightenment through transcendence. So I'm curious about that. What was that journey like for you? And can you explain what a transcendent experience is?
Yes, definitely. So after I started the journey of transformation, which was the metamorphosis journey, I kind of stabilized at one point. I was like, okay, things were going okay, but I was just feeling very lonely. It was early times, me in Australia. I didn't have family, friends, or anything. It was 31st December. This was 2017, and I felt very lonely. And I just went and this was in Chatswood. They were just sat under a tree because I was thinking, okay, tomorrow is January 1st. I'm going to just go and go for lunch, dinner, go for a movie, do some shopping. That was my happy place, right? And then I thought, okay, let me send some messages for people before New Year's, and my phone battery died. So I just sat down and I was looking up a tree and I just saw the leaves swaying. And I don't know what happened because I just came out like after a jolt, and I'm like, what is this? Where am I? Because that's how I felt. I felt like I'd gone for a while. And then I don't know how long I was gone because I didn't have a time to look at, but I felt it was quite a while. And then I realized, but this is what happened. I had euphoria. I was in euphoria. It was an epiphany moment. And the euphoria was like, I was feeling so happy. And that moment, I knew I had transcended by being hypnotized by nature. I do meditation regularly. I've been meditating for so many years now. Not once have I transcended during meditation, even though I practice transcendental meditation. I have never transcended. This was pure transcendence because that moment is when I chose to start my social enterprise called I Beyond Bliss. That was the name of the business. I do retreats under that business name. So because I was beyond bliss, and that was the message saying, start this journey of uplifting humanity. Because at that time I was only helping myself. That moment was the message that I was to go uplift humanity. I remember running home because I didn't want to be out. I felt someone's going to take me out of this vortex. I felt I was in that vortex. It was pure bliss, pure bliss. I ran home. I locked myself inside my room. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to go out. I don't want to party. I don't want to enjoy. I just want to be here. I started to write and write and write about this experience. I also did a small podcast on that experience called Feather in the Wind. Megan, that experience, oh my gosh, pure euphoria. It lasted for 3 days, literally 3 days. I think only on the 3rd or something of January did I leave my room. I don't know. I was just floating. I was afloat in a vortex. So that was my profound experience. And the message at that time was to go uplift humanity, heal the world. And that's when I started this journey to help others.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that. So I'm loving learning all of these things about you, Uma. It's beautiful.
I'm grateful you're asking this because I mean, it's just you go back the travel line, right? You know,
Yeah.
when we rethink, of course, it's there in the back of your head. We're not talking about it every day. So I'm grateful, yeah, for
Yeah,
this opportunity.
beautiful, beautiful. Now, I do want to ask about your PhD, but before we step into that, I believe that you've got an offer for the audience.
Yes, I do.
Can you tell
So,
the audience about this? I'll put the QR code up.
yes. The offer for our audience is called the self-discovery session. So this self-discovery session is a journey of discovery of where you are, where you need to get to, and what might be potentially holding you back, and how you can overcome that barrier, right? And this is exactly what I went through during my metamorphosis journey. The first thing I did was my self-discovery. So I've packaged it as a session for anyone who'd like to go onto the path of transformation. But the first is like diagnosis of your subconscious and emotional blueprint, and tell you, here you go, this is what's going on. So
Wow,
that's
thank you. That's a very generous offer. So the QR code is on the screen. So there's a complimentary self-discovery session with Uma. So thank you for that. Now, in my introduction, I read that you're about to embark on a PhD in mindfulness.
yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about that? I don't think I've ever heard of anyone doing a PhD in mindfulness before. So can you share some information, please?
Course, of course. Thank you. That's a great one. I'm very passionate about mindfulness. Again, part of the mindset work is mindfulness. Again, that one, Megan, I just did it to help myself, right? When this difficult time was going on, I realized that pain was inevitable, but suffering is a choice. Again, one of our sponsors, I saw even that in one of the sponsors' message. So, but so true to that. Pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice, and I was suffering. So when I went into the mindfulness journey, it was to help myself, to heal myself. And then I started the incredible benefit of mindfulness. And now as a corporate trainer, I run mindfulness programs because I want to help people and let them know that there's a way to live life. Mindfulness is a lifestyle. And just like you said, it was not popular before, not many publications, but now there's lots of publications on mindfulness. So my focus is on mindfulness for workplace wellness as an advocate for mental health in workplace and communities. I run mindfulness. So this is basically the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. This is a quote by John Kabat-Zinn, the definition of mindfulness. So I did my second master's. That was a master's by thesis in mindfulness, because the moment I experienced it, I was like, I want to take this into the world, but not everybody is going to buy this, because, I mean, when I say buy this, buy the idea, is because, oh, is it woo-woo? How do you bring in mindfulness into the work? So I needed evidence, right?
Yeah.
That's how I did my research, and I showed great outcome out of the research, and so now I'm embarking on a PhD to scale that same into a bigger project.
Wow. And so how long will the PhD take you, Uma?
Wow, it's going to take 3 to 4 years time.
Wow. Gosh. So
Yeah.
you're really going to have to be practicing mindfulness through this as well for yourself.
Oh, 100%. And for me, Megan, mindfulness is a lifestyle,
Yeah.
because let's look at the basics. We are beings, but we've become accustomed to human doings. So I remember doing, and forgot about the pleasure of being. So now mindfulness has taught me the art of being when doing. So this is consciousness, pure consciousness, elevating to a level of consciousness, to connecting to your higher power, and then creating it into a collective consciousness. That's why I like to take it to the workplace, corporates, and communities, because one person's consciousness is not enough to transform the world. We want collective consciousness. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I think we'll all need to stay tuned and you'll need to keep us up to date with how you go with that. And I'll have you back in a few years and you can talk about it more.
Love to
Maybe can
Megan.
you do a quantum jump so that it's already done?
See, well, that's the thing. It's already there. It's already available. It's done and it's available for us. But because we're so caught up in this, one dimension world, in the matrix, so it's already there. So every single possibility is done and available, but where we tune ourselves with their energy, vibration, and frequency is what we manifest into our life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow, I love it. I love it. So, excuse me, Uma. Uma, we've only actually got a couple of minutes left. Can you believe that already? So,
I
I'm
can't.
going to ask you the same question that I ask all of my guests before we finish our conversation. So, can you share with us what your favorite quote is and why is it so important to you?
Yeah. My favorite quote is, "Nothing is missing. We are not awake to see it."
Nothing is missing. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So what that actually says is everything is already there. It's available, right? So I love this quote because the realization that you are not awake to what's there, right?
Mm,
And we are not awake because we are not conscious. The conscious mind is only 5%. The subconscious is guiding you at a 95%.
mm.
Hence, it comes down to my teaching and my learning and my preaching of mindfulness and being able to quantum jump in our life by heightening our awareness.
That's
I love
beautiful.
it. Thank
And
you.
it just fits perfectly for the whole conversation that we've had today. So, yeah,
Yes.
beautiful. So, Uma, thank you so much for being my guest today and for sharing so much of your journey. And as I said before, I feel like I've learned so much more about you after our conversation. So, I suspect now next time that we catch up, it will be a lot deeper and probably longer conversations when we catch up. But I look forward to that. So, thank you, Uma. And
Thank
I'd
you
also
so much.
You're welcome. And I'd also like to just thank our dedicated audience, our supporters, and then also to our sponsors. And I hope that everybody has an amazing and beautiful weekend. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. And thank you again, Uma.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.